Get over here now and pick up the old hag we kicked out of our house because we want nothing to do with her." About a month after my father's funeral, I received an unexpected call from Jackson. He had kicked my mother out of the house and demanded that I take care of her from now on. I was taken aback, unable to comprehend the situation immediately. "You're joking, right? You didn't actually kick Mom out of the house? Come see for yourself." "Oh, and I let her take Dad's memorial tablet." "Why would you do something so cruel?" "I have no use for Mom now that we can't get Dad's inheritance." "She's just a poor burden, isn't she?" I was shocked. Apparently, my late father had debts, and after paying them off, there was no inheritance left. This was news to me. Even worse, Jackson and his wife had been living in the family home all this time. It was outrageous. "It's getting dark soon. If you don't come to pick her up, Mom will be sleeping on the streets." "How could you be so cruel?" "I will never forgive you for this, Jackson." "I don't need your forgiveness." "That's just too harsh." Jackson hung up without hearing me out, and subsequent calls went unanswered. When I managed to reach my mother, she confirmed that everything Jackson had said was true. Angry at Jackson and worried for my mother, I had no choice but to drive over to where she was. I am Lily, a 27-year-old woman in a hurry. 3 years ago, I married Mason, who is the same age as me, and we've been living together since. At the beginning of our marriage, we lived with my parents in the family home, but 2 years ago, Jackson and his wife abruptly moved in. They said our presence was making the place crowded, and we were forced to leave. My older brother, Jackson, 8 years my senior, has always been selfish, but his marriage seems to have enhanced that trait. Our family home, where I was born and raised, is a spacious mansion inherited from my grandfather, with extensive land. There should be no discomfort in living together. I was not satisfied with the situation and argued with Jackson, but my husband, who hates conflicts, urged us to leave. Around that time, my father was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver, which had already significantly worsened. I wanted to spend his last moments with him, but that didn't happen. The disease rapidly consumed my father, and he passed away a month ago. My heart ached knowing that my mother must be in much more pain than I was. To have my own brother treat us this way, amidst all the fresh sorrow, it was pitiful. What would happen next was truly a shock. An hour later, when we arrived at our family home, my mom was sitting desolate on a suitcase in the garden. The front door was locked. Jackson, she said, had taken her keys. Using my set of keys, I unlocked the door and walked in with my mom. Jackson and Olivia were sprawled on the sofa, nonchalantly watching TV. "Is this some kind of joke?" "Huh? How did you get in?" "I used my key to open the front door." "Isn't it obvious?" Slipped my mind. "Leave your key, take the old lady, and go." "This isn't funny. How can you be watching TV after kicking your own mother out of the house? Besides, if the house remained even after Dad's debts were paid off, Mom has a right to live here." "Huh? What are you talking about?" Infuriated by Jackson's dismissive attitude, I stood in front of the TV. "Mom has a right to inherit this house. If you can't live with her, you should be the one to leave, Jackson." "Shut up. This house is mine. Dad gave it to me when he was alive. Don't act smart without knowing anything." "What? What do you mean? There's no way Dad gave this house to Jackson before he died." Mom also looked puzzled, shaking her head. In the face of our confusion, Jackson smirked and got up from the sofa, bringing out an envelope from a room in the back. "Look at this." "What's this?" "It's proof that I inherited this house." The envelope contained documents proving the inheritance, prepared by a judicial scrivener, and a real estate ownership certificate. He said that the property had been transferred to his name a month before Dad passed away. Mom and I were shocked as we looked at the documents. Why would Dad do something like this? Asking a departed person doesn't yield an answer. I sighed, looking at his picture. Why would Dad hand over the house to Jackson without discussing it with Mom? Because I'm his favorite, of course. I told him that Mom would take the house once he passed away, so he gave it to me while he was still alive. That can't be. I can't believe it. Open your eyes and face the reality. No matter how many times we checked the documents, the property was in Jackson's name. All this, just for a house? My mom muttered in disbelief. Is there no other inheritance? Nothing left for Mom? Nothing. Be glad that the debts are cleared. This can't be real. You're not just worrying about Mom. You realize there's no inheritance for you either, right? The bank card he handed over contained only a few dollars. I wasn't after Dad's inheritance, but it was a shock to learn that he had left me nothing. This is too cruel. And to add insult to injury, Olivia was laughing her heart out seeing our dejection. Now get lost. You poor people have no business here. Jackson and Olivia forcibly drove us out of the house. Ouch! That hurts. Mom had fallen and scraped her palm when they pushed us out. Blood was seeping from the wound. As I wrapped her hand in my handkerchief, tears of frustration welled up and fell. My mother, seeing me like this, gently wiped my tears, her eyes filled with sorrow as well. Mom, our place is small, but come stay with us. But I don't want to impose on Mason. I'll find somewhere else to stay, don't worry. I can't just leave you like this. I'm going to call Mason right now, just wait. Wiping my tears, I grabbed my cell phone and dialed my husband. From the other end of the line, I heard Mason's voice. Hello? Mason. I'm sorry for calling out of the blue. My mom has been kicked out of her house. As I explained the situation to my surprised husband, he hummed in understanding, though he seemed a bit hesitant. I held my breath, waiting for Mason's response. Our apartment is pretty cramped compared to Mom's house. It might not be the most comfortable. Yeah, our place is tiny. But I don't mind. Bring your mom over. We've had times where we were taken care of at home, too. In times of trouble, we should help each other out. Mason, thank you so much. My husband is a kind man with a big heart. He could never leave someone in need. Quickly, we took Mom to our apartment, and from that day on, we lived together. However, living with 3 people in our small apartment was certainly cramped. We don't have enough savings to buy a house yet, but should we move to a slightly larger place? That might be good. I feel bad for your mom in this small space. As my husband and I were searching for properties on the computer, my mom's cell phone rang. After a while, she hung up the phone and said something we never could have imagined. Why don't we live in my Highlands condominium? Wait, what? Highlands condominium? Yes. What do you mean? My mother began to explain, to our surprise. Apparently, my grandfather, who was a wealthy man, was quite a spendthrift and spent all the money he made in a day, on that day. In order to deal with his constant borrowing, my grandmother had no choice but to sell off their farmland and make ends meet. According to my mom, my father was also a big spender. But we don't have any assets other than the house we lived in, so I was really worried about our future. That's why I invested in real estate with the money I earned when I was working before I got married. My husband and I were absolutely stunned. It turns out, in addition to the Highlands condominium, my mom was also managing an apartment building and had made a significant amount of money from her real estate investments. I can't even comprehend this, it's too amazing. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Anyway, I just got a call from the management company that there's a vacancy in the Highlands condominium. We can move in next month, what do you think? There was no reason to refuse such a generous offer. Plus, it was a Highlands condominium with 3 bedrooms, a living room, a dining room, and a kitchen, located just a 5-minute walk from the station, which was much more comfortable than our current situation. Thank you, Mom. But we may only be able to pay as much rent as we are for the apartment. You don't need to worry about that. No way. We have to do this properly, even if we're family. Oh. I need to tell the landlord that we're moving out. Looking at my husband and I beaming with joy, my mother's face brightens too. Time flew by as we busied ourselves preparing to move in. Before we knew it, we had spent 2 months living in our new home, Highlands condominium. As I was about to head out for some shopping, I was taken aback when the Jackson couple suddenly appeared in front of the condominium entrance. Why are you, a pauper, living in Highlands condominium? Did you hit the jackpot or something? Of course not. Highlands condominium has always belonged to my mom. Jackson and Olivia were both taken aback. What? They exclaimed in unison, looking up at the towering condominium. I couldn't help but burst into laughter at their confused and goofy expressions. Jackson, his face flushing red, began to seethe with anger. That wretched woman! I can't believe she was hiding this from us while pretending to be poor. My mom never said she was poor. You just assumed it, Jackson. Plus, she inherited a large house. What's wrong with that? That's not the point! Don't yell here. It's disrespectful to the other residents. Besides, how did you know I was here? Jackson said that when he couldn't reach my mother, he tracked her down using her mobile phone's location. Why are you trying to contact Mom now, after kicking her out? I'd bet it's something nasty again. Regardless, if Mom is here, I want to see her. Let me in, now. You must be joking. If you hurt Mom again, I couldn't bear it. If you have something to say, you can tell me. But they kept insisting on seeing my mother without revealing why. The Jackson couple seemed rather flustered. Weren't you living comfortably in your huge family house, just the 2 of you? It's none of your business. Fine, if you don't want to tell me, that's okay. I have to go now. Bye. As I tried to walk past the Jackson couple, Jackson suddenly grabbed my arm tightly. Ouch! Let me go! Just call Mom! Absolutely not! I'll call the police. But Jackson just scoffed at me, as if looking down on me. There's no way the police would come for a simple family argument. Even if they did, there's no way you could sue me for just grabbing your arm. I suppose you're right. It was true, calling the police over something so minor might not only be futile, but also disruptive to others. I felt bad, and ended up not saying anything. Fine. I'll tell my mom, but only if you tell me why you're here. The utility bills for that house are ridiculous. Just for the AC, the electric bill is $500. This is no joke. Their old, traditional house had more than 8 rooms, so it was no surprise that utility costs were high. But even so, a $500 electricity bill seemed a little steep. It was a particularly hot summer, so they probably overused the AC. I thought you would have known that from the start. How could we have known? Mom used to pay the bills. Jackson scratched his head frantically as Olivia fumed. There's no way we would have known. Do you know the property tax for that house is $5,000 a year? What? I can't believe you didn't know. Why would an old house like that cost so much? How are we supposed to pay that? Our house is old and has a large yard, so it's only natural that it would cost a lot to maintain. I also pointed out a reality to the Jacksons that they might not have realized. And apparently it costs more in taxes to give away property while you're alive than after you pass away. This is going to be tough going forward. Wait, is that true? I see you didn't know. I told them this was all true, information I had heard from my mom, and the color drained from the Jacksons' faces. Seeing the stunned Jacksons, Olivia burst out in anger, saying, "It's your fault for not doing your homework." And they started fighting right in front of me. After all the trouble we went through to get Dad to change the name on the house, this is too much. That's what you get for doing something so underhanded. But even Dad said clearly that it would be better to give it to me than to you or Mom. I can't believe it. I was shocked and fell silent, realizing that my father had disregarded my mom and me. Then, seizing the moment, Jackson made an outrageous request. "You can have the house. Let's exchange it for this Highlands condominium." What are you talking about? This isn't mine, it belongs to Mom. Please, talk to Mom for me. I beg you. I promise to pass on your message, nothing more. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Feeling ridiculous for even engaging with them, I gave up on shopping and started to head back into the Highlands condominium through the entrance, but the Jacksons tried to follow me in. Their audacity left me speechless. "I'll sue you for trespassing." You just told us that wouldn't be a legal issue. It seems like they won't get the message until they suffer a real consequence. Exasperated, I called out to the management office next to the entrance. "Excuse me, could you please call the security? Someone who's not a resident of the Highlands condominium is trying to force their way in." What? Wait a minute. The security guard, who was on standby 24/7 at the Highlands condominium, came running immediately. With the large security guard in front of them, the two of them were startled, and I warned them once again to avoid the same thing happening in the future. "I didn't call the police just now because you only grabbed my arm, but if you try to use force or enter the Highlands condominium again, I will really call the police, okay? We beg you, don't do that. If I even catch a glimpse of you, I'll report it. So go back to your mansion that you got from Dad, got it?" Apparently scared of the police, the Jacksons hastily retreated. I went back to my apartment and told my mother about the exchange with the Jacksons. But why did Dad let Jackson inherit the house? As I was feeling downcast, my mom smiled. Dad must have known what he was doing when he let Jackson inherit. He didn't want to burden me or Lily. Even though Dad was indifferent about money, he cared for me a lot. Of course, he always said he loved Lily so much. Really? I was overjoyed to hear that my father felt that way about me. When my mom heard about the inheritance from Jackson, she muttered, "Are you going this far?" Because she realized that he had given a severe punishment to Jackson, who was always self-centered. "You knew how Dad felt, Mom." "Of course, dear. We've been together for 38 years. I know what he's thinking without him saying a word. Besides, Jackson never took care of Dad when he was sick. I was under the impression that the Jacksons were looking after my father. However, it turns out they hardly ever visited him, not at home and barely in the hospital. When I visited my dad, he would often tell me, 'Jackson comes to see me, and you have your job to attend to, Lily. There's no need for you to go out of your way.' I took his words to heart, not realizing that it was a gentle lie meant to ease my worries. I had it all wrong about Dad. I feel awful. I want to apologize. Don't fret, Lily. Your feelings are reaching Dad in heaven. The ones who should worry are the Jacksons. Who these days would buy a big, high-maintenance house like that? I bet they'll struggle to find a buyer. Hee hee. The truth in my mom's mischievously gleeful words became evident after a while. The Jacksons, unable to maintain the house on their own, had put it up for sale but couldn't find a buyer. They continue to live in it, even a year later. In the midst of all this, Olivia accidentally started a grease fire while cooking chicken tempura, and the house quickly burned down. And since they didn't have money for fire insurance, their life is going to get even tougher. While I understand their predicament, it doesn't concern me. Apparently, the Jacksons are now camping out in the burned-down remains of their house. Living in the Highlands condominium is absolutely fantastic, and I can only feel gratitude toward my mother. I've been paying my mom rent every month, but it seems she's been saving it all to ensure we won't face hardship in the future. Every day is filled with peace and happiness as I live with my incredible mother and kind husband. As I visited my father's grave, I vowed to him that I would continue to repay my mother's kindness. I'm Catherine, 39 years old. I'm a full-time housewife and a mother of one child. I live with my husband, Bob, and our 5-year-old daughter now. I'm the middle child of 3 siblings. I have an older brother and a younger brother, but we're not that close. Maybe being the middle child is a bit isolating. Despite the gender difference, my brothers get along really well. Ever since we were kids, they were always playing in the mountains together, but I wasn't allowed to join in just because I was a girl. My older brother is 3 years older than me, and my younger brother is 2 years younger than me. Even though my brothers are about 5 years apart, they seem to get along, and I heard they live together since they became adults. Since I got married 10 years ago, I've been out of touch with my family, and I don't know what my brothers are up to. I've always felt alienated and lonely. I loved both of my brothers, so it was hard not being able to play with them. So, I decided if I ever had kids, I would only have up to 2. In the end, it seemed like I wasn't meant to be a mother, but finally, my daughter was born 5 years ago, and because of my age, I gave up on a second child. Now, I'm very close with Bob and my daughter, and I'm living a peaceful, everyday life. As for my brothers, I've stopped thinking about them in my daily life. Even if I heard they're still unmarried, I wasn't interested. Then, one day, my older brother got engaged. Her name is Marilyn, and she was his classmate when he was in elementary and middle school. I also went to my parents' house to say hello, leaving my daughter in Bob's care. As I entered the house, my parents were making a big fuss. They were preparing coffee and sweets, cleaning up the house, all because my brother was bringing Marilyn over, and they didn't want any slip-ups. I was roped into helping as well. My brother was over 40 and still couldn't get married, so my parents seemed to have been worrying all this time. My younger brother, who arrived before me, was complaining that he's the only single one left, but when my older brother entered the house with Marilyn, everyone celebrated grandly. I looked at the scene with somewhat cold eyes. It felt like something happening in a distant country that had nothing to do with me, and I couldn't sincerely celebrate. All the best to you, Mike and Marilyn. That was all I could manage, and I'm not even sure if I managed a convincing smile. As I was preparing the coffee, Marilyn came into the kitchen and asked if she could help. I declined with a smile. "You're our guest, please have a seat." "But you know, Catherine, time is cruel, isn't it? You, who used to be so small, are now a lady of the house." Marilyn smirked at me, as if she was plotting something unpleasant. "What do you mean?" "Oh, it's nothing. Just that I've never thought you, whom Mike always said was so cute, were cute since you were small." Mike is my brother's name. I was a bit stuck for a response, so I just nodded in agreement. Is that so? Marilyn said just that and then returned to the living room where everyone was. I don't know what she wanted to say, but I don't plan on getting along with my brother and his wife. Even if Marilyn dislikes me, I think it doesn't matter. About a month after that gathering, my mother said, "Come home for this year's reunion. I haven't seen Bob and my granddaughter in a while, so our family of 3 went to my parents' house." At first, my mother prepared coffee, Bob and my daughter greeted Marilyn, my father and brother lifted my daughter up high, and my younger brother patted her on the head, so my daughter was overjoyed. Marilyn also spoke to my daughter with a smile. Relieved by such a scene, I stood up to prepare for everyone's drink refills. While making coffee in the kitchen, Marilyn came by again. "Catherine, I don't want to see your face at our family gatherings. As a wife, you should be going to your husband's family gatherings." "Don't worry. I hardly have anything to do with this house. Even today, I was only called over by my mother." "Then, please don't come over even if my MIL calls you." I don't understand why Marilyn hates me so much, but I'm not interested in the woman who is going to be my brother's wife. They say the opposite of love is indifference, and this is exactly it. Whether I'm disliked or not, I didn't care. I've been treated like an unwanted person by my brothers, and my heart was worn out. I met Bob, gave birth to our daughter and started to feel happy, but Marilyn probably doesn't understand my cold feelings. "If you hate me, please don't talk to me." As I retorted that, Marilyn glaringly looked at me and returned to the living room. Since my brother's marriage, my mother started calling me home more often to unite the family, but I hadn't gone since the incident with Marilyn. I decided to keep out of it, thinking that as long as Marilyn doesn't make my brother unhappy, it didn't matter how she treated me. My brother got married in his 40s, and I didn't want to rain on his parade. We didn't meet frequently, and I thought it was okay to endure it when we occasionally met. I also told Bob about this. "Do you really want to become family with someone who hurts you?" Bob said, siding with me. "It's okay. I wasn't close with my brother, but I still want him to be happy as a sibling. If it ends with just me bearing it, then it's okay." Bob didn't seem convinced, but I was somewhat happy that he got angry for me. However, a call came to my phone after a while. It was from an unknown number, so I answered it suspiciously, and the caller was Marilyn. "Oh, Catherine! How have you been?" "Marilyn. Do you need something?" Mike is so simple. "When I said I wanted to be friends with you, he immediately gave me your number." "Is that so?" I had no idea why Marilyn would call me. "Do you keep in touch with Mike?" I answered while pretending to be calm, although I was flustered. No, I'm not." "Are you lying?" "I'm not lying. Even if I badmouth you, no one believes me." "How annoying are you?" Did I do something to you, Marilyn?" "It's the worst to not realize it. Anyway, you've married, so stay out of this. Oh, and don't say I said this. If you do, I'll send some scary people I know to your house." I immediately hung up the phone, feeling chilled by Marilyn's words. "What was that?" I was unsure whether to tell my brother that he should call off the marriage with Marilyn, or to consult my parents first. Anyway, I was scared and my heart was pounding. At that moment, a hand was placed on my shoulder, and I was startled and my body shook. What happened?" When I turned around, Bob was staring at me with a worried look. "You're as pale as a ghost." When he said that, I realized for the first time that my fingertips were cold. It was a fear so intense that I could feel my blood running cold. "Well, actually." When I told Bob about what just happened, he became visibly angry. What the hell is that? For now, just block the number. And let's report this to your parents or brother immediately. There's no way he can be happy marrying that person. But maybe she's a good person in front of my brother. I just need to stay out of it, I'm sure. Do you think that's the end of it? That woman threatened you, didn't she? She's not a decent person. If your Mike knew what she did to you, I'm sure. Bob's words made me angry. I get it. But why do I have to do something about it? I've been keeping my distance from my brother and younger brother for a long time now. If our three-person household can stay intact, isn't that enough? Is that not okay? I was usually able to think calmly. But remembering how my brothers would exclude me and play without me, as if I never existed, as if it was always just the two of them, caused all my past anger to explode. I knew that Bob wasn't the one I should be lashing out at. Suddenly realizing that, I apologized to Bob. I'm sorry, you've done nothing wrong. Then Bob hugged me tightly. You've been holding back a lot, haven't you? I'm on your side no matter what, Catherine. You can vent your feelings to me. But I think you should talk with your brothers. Hearing Bob say that, I felt a sense of relief in my heart. Perhaps because I felt a little more at ease, I decided to contact my brothers and arrange for a conversation just between the three of us. As it was quite late that day, I thought I would call them around noon the next day. However, I never ended up making that call to my brothers. I received a phone call from my mother. My brothers in Maryland had been in an accident. Apparently, my brothers in Maryland had been on a trip together for the past 2 days, and on the way back, they had been in a collision with a truck. I rushed to the hospital in a panic. Marilyn had only suffered minor injuries, but my brothers were seriously injured. By the time I arrived, the surgery had somehow finished, and my brothers seemed to have made it through. They were transferred to the ICU, and I was only allowed a short visit. I kept my distance because of the situation with Marilyn. But my mother, worrying about Marilyn, asked, "It must be hard for you to go home alone, Marilyn. You don't need to worry about anything at home. Why don't you stay with us for a while?" But Marilyn, with an unhappy look on her face, said, "No, thank you. I'll go home to my parents' house." "In that case, I'll drive you home." "No, I'm fine." And with that, she quickly left the hospital. She must be upset. Poor thing. At least she's safe at her parents' house. Surely Marilyn was also shaken by the accident and was probably scared. However, after that, Marilyn never came to visit the hospital, and my parents and I visited frequently. At first, my brothers were in pain and couldn't move at all, but as time went on, they slowly began to get better. My brother's marriage to Marilyn was still in the consultation stage with the wedding hall, and the formal contract was yet to be made. Unable to reach Marilyn, my mother contacted the venue on my brother's behalf and explained the situation. Unable to discuss things such as reconciling with my brothers and the contents of Marilyn's phone call, I visited the hospital many times. Although they couldn't move, they gave me a gentle smile when they saw me. About 2 months after they were admitted, I went to visit them alone and was about to open the door. I could hear my mom, my older brother, and my younger brother chatting inside. But well, if something happened to me, I made sure the insurance money would go to Catherine. If Catherine is happy, then I'm content. Truly, I feel bad for Marilyn, but it was good we didn't invite Catherine. Marilyn seems uncomfortable around my sister. If it wasn't the case, we would have invited the whole family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were always together, always treating me like an outsider. That kid, when she was small, she used to imitate me and got injured. I am a man after all, so I've done dangerous things, but I can't let Catherine get hurt again. Plus, our sister, she's so serious all the time. It's hard to depend on someone who tries so hard. At this, Mom laughed with disbelief. You've thought that much about Catherine. That's not all. We both bowed our heads to Bob and pleaded with him to take care of Catherine. Those were the days. I remember how surprised Bob was. It seems like he's taking good care of her just like he promised. Everyone was laughing and chatting about this. But I couldn't join in. Tears were streaming down my face. I couldn't lift my head. How much had I been unaware of my surroundings? There were so many people who cared for me, yet I thought I was always the odd one out. At that moment, I decided to backtrack the way I came. And I went to Marilyn's parents' house. When I rang the doorbell and introduced myself, a very disgruntled Marilyn appeared. Could you please go visit my brother in the hospital? I heard you haven't visited him even once since the accident. Somehow, I managed to bow my head deeply as I asked her. But Marilyn flatly refused me. You think I'm going to marry a man in that state? I told you a lot of things, but it doesn't matter anymore. I plan to discuss breaking off our engagement once everything has settled down. I'm glad we didn't get married. Marilyn, didn't you get engaged to my brother because you love him? Don't be silly. I work in insurance sales and I approached him because I knew he had a high insurance policy. His salary seemed high too. But it was a misunderstanding. That man, he put you as the insurance beneficiary. Usually, you change the beneficiary to your spouse once you're engaged. When I convinced him of that, he said he'd change it to my name after we were officially married. I don't need a man with such injuries. So you were telling me to stay away from home, so my brother and I wouldn't meet. Yes. If he cared that much for his sister, I thought it would be a nuisance. But I won't say those things anymore, so don't worry. The accident completely killed my love for him. And the fact that I got injured too is the worst. The accident is partly your brother's fault, so he should compensate me for the emotional damage. Emotional damage. The one at fault for the accident was the other party. Shouldn't you be demanding from him? Of course, I've demanded from him as well. But if he hadn't invited me on the trip, I wouldn't have been in the accident. He should compensate for that. Marilyn's comments ignited a furious anger within me. But I took a deep breath to calm myself down. If you consult a lawyer, you'll find that your demands won't go through. You don't know that. I do. But more importantly, about my smartphone. What? I don't care about your smartphone. I see. It's a bother to take notes, so my phone automatically records all phone calls. Like the threats you made. What would happen if I reported it to the police, I wonder? When I said that and chuckled, Marilyn shouted in anger. You! What the hell are you thinking? Recording is wiretapping. Wiretapping? What kind of crime is that? You're recording people's conversations without permission. There must be some crime. Just then, Marilyn's mother, who had arrived at the front door, yelled at me. How dare you record your conversation without permission? Hand over your phone, now. Marilyn also glared at me with a disgusted look on her face. I shouldn't have gotten involved with him. It's a relief not to be part of a family with a woman like you. I responded to the two of them with a smile. I'm glad, too, that you wish to break off the engagement. I wouldn't want a person with such a bad character around my brother. I said just that and left Marilyn's family home as if I was running away. After that, I immediately headed to the hospital room where my brother and younger brother were. Both of you. What I'm about to tell you might shock you. But I want you to know, so I won't hide it anymore. I let them hear the contents of the phone call I received from Marilyn. Just by that, both my elder and younger brothers were surprised and their eyes widened. I also started the voice recorder on my smartphone when I went to meet them earlier, and recorded the conversation. When they heard it, my elder brother was infuriated first. That woman. So, that's why she didn't come to visit. And the horrible things she did to Catherine. Unforgivable. Even though my elder brother's leg was still healing from a complicated fracture, he started trying to get out of bed, so I hurriedly stopped him. Stop it! I didn't let you hear this because I wanted you to get angry. I just want you to give up on marrying Marilyn. Then my younger brother spoke up. I can't forgive her either. But sis, why did you go to such lengths for us? Today, I actually came to this room once. But you guys were talking with Mom, so I couldn't enter. Actually, I overheard you two talking about me. Sorry for eavesdropping. When I apologized, the two of them shook their heads together. So that's what it was. We're sorry for being distant. Since we took a cold attitude when you wanted to explore the mountains with us as kids, we didn't know how to interact with you after that. But the truth is, both of us always cared about you. Relieved by my elder brother's words, I broke into a smile. Thank you. I'm an adult now. I don't only need to be protected. I can protect you guys too. After that, my brothers, though they still had some scars, fully recovered and were discharged. Later on, my elder brother announced the termination of his engagement with Marilyn. Even though Marilyn unrepentantly demanded compensation, he refused, saying it was not justified for him to pay. Naturally, hiring a lawyer wouldn't result in any compensation being paid out. It seems Marilyn thought that her marriage to my brother was her last shot at happiness. However, she seemed to have misunderstood that if she claimed damages for the accident, she would receive a large amount of compensation, which is why she was so aggressive. Then my brothers told Marilyn's mutual friends about the awful things she had done to me. They even sent recordings of her threatening me. It seems this was far more painful for her than being reported to the police. I heard that Marilyn is now isolated, shunned by everyone around her. Since then, I've returned to my normal life. My heart is more at peace than before. I've become closer with my brother, and we even go out for drinks together. It's as if we're trying to make up for the time we spent keeping our distance. Both my brothers have grown closer with Bob, and my daughter has warmed up to them as well. 2 years later, by some miracle, both of my brothers found their future spouses. My older brother is already preparing for his wedding, while my younger brother seems to want to continue dating for a while longer. Of course, there's no one threatening me, and we're on good terms with their parents. I hope we can continue to have this good relationship as in-laws. I think to myself,